health coach and founder of Modern Holistic Health, co-founder of Bio1 Sciences. And I want to welcome you to today's episode of Inner Circle Live. We have a really great topic, a super relevant topic. I think all of our topics are pretty relevant, but we've got a really relevant topic that we're going to be talking about today, and that is the dangerous effects of stress. And I'm also going to show you a story. I'm going to take you through a story, also known as a case study, right, of an individual and how stress was affecting this person and what they were able to do about it to get their health back from the negative effects of stress. Hold on one second and I'll be right back. All right. So if you haven't already jumped in to say hello, please jump in and say hi. And for my team who is helping me tonight, if you guys want to jump on the social channels and assist anyone there, that would be lovely. I just can't do that while I'm doing this. All right. So give me 1 second here, and I'm going to pull up some slides so that we can have some awesome visuals to look at as well. All right, here we go. I'm going to do a screen share. I see some more people popping in. Welcome, 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 welcome. Here we go. And can everyone see the screen? Perfect. Yay, just wanted to make sure. All right, so let's go into this topic that we've got for tonight, the dangerous effects of stress. I think a lot of us kind of know, right? Like we've all heard that stress kills. We've all heard that stress gave me my gray hairs or stress aged me. Some of us have even had the opportunity to witness that either in ourselves or in others. But I want to take us on a little bit of a deeper dive. We're not going to do a 5-part series on this, although I could. I've got a lot of information that I could share with you on this. And depending on your interest levels, we can always take a deeper dive. We can go into, part 2, part 3, part 4. So we can really dissect this apart if you find an interest in this. But today, what we're going to do is just really go over more of a high-level overview of what happens with this unmitigated stress and what is the connection between chronic stress, disease, and aging. Now, as many of us know, and if you don't know, this is some really good information to pack away in your back pocket. Stress is not all bad. In fact, we need different types of stress in order to function and be healthy and to be resilient. So some good examples of that, actually, I'm gonna stop the share for just a second, and then we can come back to the slides. Some really good examples of how stress helps us to be more resilient are like the stress of the gravitational forces on the planet. If we didn't have those stressors, then we wouldn't be able to maintain our bone density. We would lose our bone density very quickly. How many of you are familiar with this, right? Raise your hand or pop a comment in the chat and say yes, right? Like, for example, when we send astronauts up into space, years ago, they used to come back having lost not only a lot of muscle mass, but bone density as well. So what do they do now to prevent that? Does anyone want to put that into the chat? What do astronauts do now to put the right kind of stress on their body so that when they come back to Earth after being out there for months, that they haven't lost any bone density or bone mass? So vibration plates are good. I don't know if they're doing that on the shuttles because of the lack of gravity. What else? Does anyone know? I see you raising your hand. Pop it into the chat. So building muscle mass. When you build muscle mass, it puts stress on the bone. So for example, I'm going to use this cherry stem right here. I'm going to use this cherry stem as an example. Let's say that this cherry stem is a bone. Now, there is a law called Wolff's Law, like a wolf, like a dog, Wolff's Law. And it states that stress on bone creates more bone. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, I'll show you. So if this were a leg bone, for example, maybe the femur, imagine all the muscles that connect from the top of the femur, like around the hip area and the groin area, all the way down to the knee, right? You've got your quadricep muscles. There are 4 of those. You've got your hamstrings, right? You've got those. You've got your adductors and your abductors, which are the muscles on the inside and the outside of your thigh. So you have a bunch of muscles that connect from the top of the bone down to the bottom of the bone. When you're working out your muscles and you're making your muscles big and strong, those muscles, like let's say that from the tip of my finger here down to my thumb, let's say that this is one muscle. Let's say it's one of the quad muscles on the front of the leg. And it attaches up here at the top and it attaches down here at the bottom. As I strengthen my muscle, it will put stress on the bone. See how it's even bending the bone a little bit? Now, in reality, it's not really going to bend the bone, but I'm showing this to you for purposes of demonstration. The stronger the muscle is, since it's attaching at the top and the bottom, when you build that muscle and you're doing squats all the time and all the exercises, then you're going to build that muscle up and it's going to put stress on the bone. That if the bone wasn't as strong as it should be, it could bend the bone like this. But this stress on the bone sends a signal to the brain to tell the bone, hey, we need to make more bone cells. So the bone goes into this osteoclastic activity and the bone cells make more bone cells. And so you can create more bone density. This is one really great example of really healthy stress on the body. Okay, now what are some other examples of healthy stress? Can anyone give me any examples of healthy stress? Does anyone want to give me any other examples of healthy stress? Okay, so other examples of healthy stress would be other types of exercise. Yeah, cold showers can put a little bit of stress on the body that can create some really great positive cellular effects on the body. Yes, yes, yes. Cold showers can help you with your melatonin production at night and actually help you sleep better. We used to think it was the warm bath thing because that's what we all do with the babies. Maybe for babies that does work. For adults, it actually works really good to turn that water and let it get cold for the last few seconds before you jump out. Heat and cold exposure, those are very healthy stressors. How about getting dirt in your mouth? Would anyone consider that a healthy stress to the body? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, right. Like, haven't we learned that it's better to let our kids get dirty and play? When I'm in charge of the grandbabies, they look so dirty by the end of the day. They're super dirty. I'm letting them play outside, roll around in the dirt. We're exploring, doing all the things, running around barefoot as much as we can. Because the getting exposed to more bacteria, more viruses, all of those things in our ecosystem produce a healthy stress on our body to help us build our immune system. And this is one thing I predict that we're going to see as a problem in the next few years. We're already starting to see it. All of the repercussions of everybody using the hand sanitizers and all the crazy sanitizers during COVID, they overdid it and they weren't exposing themselves at all. And I know some people who are still not even hardly going out because they're really afraid. But we need to expose ourselves to germs every single day because that keeps us resilient. And a lot of those germs are our friends. We need them, right? And then some of them are not necessarily very friendly towards our bodies, but The good bacteria in our body will fight the bad bacteria, causing a little stress in our bodies, which that makes us more resilient. So these are some good examples of why stress is good. However, just like with anything else that we experience in this 3D human experience, too much or too little of different things can create a negative effect on us. And too much stress is one of them. So today I want to talk about the mental stress. I want to talk about the dangerous effects of stress. And I really kind of want to hit on the emotional and the mental stressors and how that can make us sick, and how that can, how there's a direct correlation between chronic stress, disease, and aging. And we are going to talk about, it is going to involve some of the biological stressors too, like when you have toxins in the body, that's causing a long-term stress to the body, right? If we're not eating right, if we're not moving our bodies, those are causing long-term stresses. We're going to hit on those as well. And I've got a really great story that I want to share with you. And so we're going to go right in, and I'm going to start with the story. So this is the story, a case study, a story of an individual, and she's in her 50s. And she is a CEO of a company, of a couple of companies. And she in general, is pretty healthy. And she once was sick, but she worked with us, and it took her a few years, and she got her health back. And last year, she had a lot of stressors come up, more than she typically has. And she can drive at a pretty hard pace because she is the CEO of a couple of businesses. And so she didn't realize right away that she wasn't managing her stress very well. But this is where getting your annual baseline labs is such a good idea. How many of you have been with us for several years and you're back to health, and you do your wellness care with us, and you do your annual testing, right? We encourage you to do that, because going forward, we don't ever want to be in a reactive state again. We want to be proactive, and we want to see things before they spiral into a terrible disease. So in the case of this particular person, I want you to take a look at some of her baseline labs, in particular, her glucose levels, her blood sugar levels, fasting blood sugar, and her hemoglobin A1C, which is a marker that we can look at in the blood that shows us over a period of time, over the long term, how her body is processing and able to utilize or not able to utilize the blood glucose for energy. So if you go back to 2018, you could see the blood glucose, fasting blood glucose was 88, hemoglobin A1C was 5.0. And I want to show you for a minute, if we scroll to the right and we look at the optimal range that's highlighted in green and the standard range, if any of you have done work with us, then you are definitely going to be familiar with the difference between the standard and the optimal range. The standard ranges are what's used in the outdated Western medical model. The ranges are way too broad. And by the time a person falls out of that range, they are like 1 point out of that range, they are full blown into whatever disease process. Now, doesn't it make sense to you that you can see it coming before you get to the disease? I'm going to give you an example here so you can see that. In the optimal range, that's also called the functional range. This is, in my opinion, from my perspective, this is the range that should be used in the medical model. It needs to be very much revamped. But the functional doctors use the optimal ranges. And as you can see here, they are more narrow. And this particular individual back in 2018 had a pretty good glucose level. That hemoglobin A1C looked great. And pretty much everything else in her labs looked really good too. Her toxin levels were looking good. We like to have our clients retest their toxin bundle every other year at least, because Believe it or not, you can be doing all the right things and you can suddenly be getting exposure that you didn't know about. I've personally experienced that myself. And then you can see the very next year in August of 2019, a little more than a year later, the blood glucose was still low, perhaps a little lower than optimal, but it was still okay. And the hemoglobin A1C was still well within range. Now, I want you to scroll down with your eyes and go to the next set of labs, the ones that were done last year in May of 2022. Now, this individual, she had been going through a lot of added stress last year, wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to it because it's not something new necessarily for her. And so she was just doing the same thing she'd been doing with regards to her work, probably more than normal. But the diet started changing a little bit. She wasn't sleeping very well. She started feeling a little bit more anxiety, like anxiety started to come back, some mind racing, and she started noticing a few things. So she had her blood done again. And you can see here that her fasting blood sugar was 99. That's pretty high for fasting blood sugar, especially when you look at her baseline history. This is why understanding where our baseline is so important. Because if her blood glucose was normally in the 90s, 95, 96, and it had been like that for years, going from 95, 96 up to 99, it's significant, but not as significant as when it goes from the 80s or the 70s up to almost 100. Can you see what a big shift that is? Raise your hand if you can see that. Raise your hand if you can see that there's a big shift. So a good doctor is going to pay attention to your baselines, and they're going to teach you how to pay attention to your baselines. How many of you can tell me if you know what your healthy baseline is for your blood glucose and your A1C? How many of you can tell me if you know what your healthy baseline is for your blood pressure, your systolic and your diastolic, the top and bottom number? These are some basic things that we should always know. Most of us know what our healthy baseline is for our weight, don't we? Yeah, but we don't know these other things. And everybody should know this. And our doctors do a disservice when they're not teaching us how to understand and memorize what our healthy baselines are. Because when you start creeping up and things start changing, that's how you can be preventative. That's how you can catch it and see it and go, whoa, you know what? This may be in the normal range for the Western medical model, but this has been creeping up the last 2 years on my labs. We need to intervene and we need to do something now before this turns into a big event. Right? A disease, a big diagnosis of something, right? And so you can see here that historically, she had low fasting blood glucose levels and low hemoglobin A1C levels. And this has been historical for her all her life. But last year, her blood glucose went up to 99 and her hemoglobin A1C jumped to 5.8. How many of you know what that means in the Western medicine model? Type it into the chat if you know what that means. Anyone? Yes, Jennifer. Full-blown type 2 diabetes. And as soon as she saw that, she went and took her blood pressure and saw how high it was. And it was actually very high. It was around 170 over 130, 170 over 140, 180 over 150 was very, very high. Some of the other symptoms that she had sat down to really pay attention to, once she saw the blood work, she sat down and started paying attention. She had jaw pain because she was clenching her jaws. What happens when people are really stressed, especially with work or, like life situations, they tend to clench their jaw. Back pain, very common. She was working way too many hours every day. Her hair was falling out. She really started paying more attention. There is a lot of hair that's coming out every time that she showers. The mind racing and the fatigue and the anxiety we already mentioned. And she wasn't staying asleep. And then there was a loss of libido. And so sometimes we don't really notice what's going on until all of a sudden something really draws our attention to what's really happening with our body. How many of you can relate to that? How many of you maybe were, going along for 10, 5, 10, 15 years and you weren't feeling well and you noticed that you had symptoms, but you weren't really paying attention to them? Just kind of bury it under Tylenol, bury it under extra coffee, bury the fatigue under coffee, bury the pain under Tylenol, bury the sleep issues under antihistamines or something for sleep. How many of you can relate to that? Like, we're not really paying attention to what's going on. Our body's talking to us and we're not listening. How many of you can relate? And so it's not until an event happens that all of a sudden we sit back and go, oh my God, the signs have been there all along. I wasn't listening. And those events can look like a stroke, a panic attack, a heart attack. All of a sudden you're breaking out all over your body, or all of a sudden you're having like whatever, right? It can also appear with something that maybe you weren't really paying attention to or maybe it wasn't a big symptom that stopped you in your tracks. Maybe it was a lab result. And in this person's case, it was her lab result that made her go, oh my God, what else is going on? So upon doing some history and really digging a little bit deeper to see what was going on. Yes, Nancy. Nancy says, I didn't know what I was hearing. I knew something was wrong. I was getting sick all the time. Yes. So with this particular individual, she had to do some reassessing. And she finally realized she was not managing her stress. And there was a lot of emotional stress, a lot of work-related stress, but she was like driving the car without stopping to put gas in it, without stopping to check the tires, without stopping to do an oil change, give the car a bath, give the car a break, right? She was just running the engines at full speed. And this was a really, really big wake-up call, especially because she has been sick once in the past. So she started working on stuff. And she retested about 7 months later in January. And you can see how her blood glucose dropped from 99 down to 93. And she went from type 2 diabetic markers right back into normal range. This was done without the aid of any supplementation. How many of you guys are interested to know what she did to actually get her health back and to make these huge changes without one supplement that was related to, working on diabetes per se? All right, good. I'm going to share that with you. But before I do, I want to show you something else. So you've heard me talk about the genetics before, and we just had a big mid-year sale on genetics testing. This is a fun little test that she decided to do just to get more data points. It's always nice to have those things, right? When we have the data points, we can better understand our operations manual. We understand the operations manual of the body, and we're not going to crash it, right? I like to use that analogy with the car too. Like, if you went to a Ferrari dealership, they're never going to put you behind the wheel unless they know that you know how to drive a high performance car, because otherwise you're going to crash it. We're crashing our bodies all the time. We are high performance vehicles. We are very high performance. Our bodies are super smart. Like a car, the human has to go take the car to get what it needs, right? We innately already know what it is that we need to heal, and our bodies know how to heal. They're programmed to heal. When they can't heal, it's because we're getting in the way. And so being able to understand our operations manual is huge. And working with people like us at Modern Holistic Health, we can teach you how to understand your operations manual, because really at the end of the day, it's not up to the doctor to heal you. It's up to you to understand how to take care of yourself and to get the guidance and the help when you need it, right? That's where we're really going to be empowered. That's where we're going to change the trajectory of health on this entire planet, is by putting that knowledge into your hands. You do not need a degree to learn how to take care of yourself. You just need somebody or a team like us who can teach you how to do it, right? So this is a test that was looking at genes for propensities for diabetes. And in this particular individual, she's got a medium risk of getting diabetes. And if we look here at a breakdown of some of these different genes, you can see what can be done to mitigate that. Now, this is what's really important to remember. You have 99% control over every one of your genes and how they work for or against you. How many of you have heard me say that before? Pop it into the chat. Say, yes, I've heard you say that before. Yes, I've heard you say that. So I want to show you what this was showing the individual when she looked. You can see that there are certain supplements that are recommended. And that doesn't mean that she should just go and jump on those supplements right away. This means that if there is a deficiency in any of these particular nutrients, then it would definitely be warranted, right? Or if a person is struggling with certain symptoms, then maybe this is where you really want to get in and work with someone who really understands this stuff to know if the recommended supplement is really truly needed or not. But I want you to take note of this. Take note of lifestyle, like aerobic exercise, right? Take note of, let's scroll down again, under the PPARG, there's aerobic exercise again. Under the ADCY5 gene, aerobic exercise, yoga, meditation, sleep, manage stress. Another one that says aerobic exercise. So my point here, where I'm trying to draw your attention, is the mitigation of stress on the body. And for this individual, this is what she needed, right? When you have chronic stress that's repeated and you have prolonged exposure, like a demanding job, right? It's going to cause elevated levels of cortisol. Cortisol is not bad, guys. Cortisol helps you regulate your ability to utilize your blood glucose. Cortisol helps you wake up in the morning. Cortisol right now is helping me to present to you so I can dial in and I can focus, right? We need it. It's great for you, but not in high amounts. In high amounts, it's like battery acid, right? Like we're not meant to have it, coursing through our veins at high levels all day, every day, because that ends up pushing you down the road towards all kinds of symptoms, conditions, and diseases, from obesity to type 2 diabetes, heart disease, depression, high blood pressure, mental health issues, hair falling out, premature aging, all kinds of things. And let me share with you what she did, and then we're going to go into some other stuff here. And I want to teach you some super valuable stuff. So she ended up addressing these things by sitting down and reevaluating what she was doing. She started working on changing her perception, because she was feeling the stress of the demands of the job, and she wasn't changing her perspective. And her perspective, the story that she was creating around how she was feeling about feeling burned out and exhausted, was creating hormones in her body that were then precipitating more stress, because she was getting more cortisol running through her body with the belief system that she had about everything she was doing. And that created this really bad cycle in her body of making more stress chemicals in her body that was creating less sleep, more stress, more anxiety, precipitating the story. And then that created more stress, which created more negative, more stress hormones. And the cycle kept going on until she ended up with diabetes. And so in her evaluations, she realized she needed to eat more during the day. She needed to eat better and eat more. She needed to drink more water. She needed to take more breaks. She needed to get outside and move around more. And she needed to change her perspective, her belief systems around how she felt about how busy she was. How do you think that CEOs of really big businesses are able to manage and be healthy. We've all seen the really healthy business owners, the ones that look healthy, right? Raise your hand if you've seen them. They look healthy. They're strong, they're healthy, they're vibrant, they're full of energy, right? And they look really young for their age. Yes, yes. And then we've seen ones that don't look healthy, right? Can you guys name any famous ones maybe that you've seen who look like they're aging? They're overweight, they don't look good, right? Right? Like they just don't look good. So like one example that I'll give you is, and we're not going to get into the politics of this. I'm just thinking of somebody that just pops up in my head, Donald Trump. That guy is a business guy. He has, I mean, multi-billion dollar businesses, and he's done it over and over and over through his entire life. When he was younger, he managed his stress pretty well. Did you notice what happened to him after he went through the presidency and was trying to run his businesses? He gained a lot of weight. He does not look healthy at all. I'll bet you he's got health issues. And there are a lot of people like that. We have CEOs in our business. We have CEOs who we're taking care of, helping them get their health back, who haven't been managing their stress properly. So it's aging them, right? They're overweight. They're not sleeping. They feel terrible. They're having mental health issues, all the things, all while trying to run their huge businesses. What's the difference between the people who can work like that and it doesn't affect them and the people who can work like that and it's making them sick? What's the difference? There's a few things, right? There's a few things. How are we taking care of the vehicle biologically with food, with movement, with sleep, those types of things? Also, how are we taking care of the vehicle from the energetic perspective? From our belief systems? What do we believe about who we are and our position in the world and the world around us? What are we believing? What stories are we telling ourselves about the work that we're doing and how busy we are? Because they're working, sometimes they're putting in 15-hour days and they look great and they feel great. I'm putting in 15-hour days and I feel like I'm going to die. Well, what's going on? Right? And so this is what she did. She reevaluated and she was able to reverse her diabetes through thought alone, because some of the changes that she made to her lifestyle by eating better, drinking more water, and moving her body around a little bit more during the day all started with changing her thought processes. So her healing really was from thought alone. Does this make sense? Yes. Melanie, it is so hard, honey. I know it is. And you and I, we can talk about that, right? I know it's hard. In fact, I'll tell you how hard it can be, because I'm not above and beyond what I'm teaching you. I haven't mastered everything perfectly. And I'll share with you that this case study was me. How many of you maybe guessed that? This was me. And this was last year. And it was a big wake-up call for me. And I thought I would never put myself into that position again, ever. Because I almost once died from not knowing how to take care of myself and not understanding all the different toxins, environmental toxins and emotional toxins in the food and all the stuff. I didn't know that. And I almost died. And I never thought I'd put myself back into that position again. But I ended up in a position where I had full-blown diabetes last year. My blood pressure was super high. Like it was a wake-up call for me. And I worked on changing my perspective, because changing my perspective, Melanie, that's what helped me make those changes. Because we can't do it by, we can't will ourselves to do it, right? Because our will only takes us so far. We have to have a change on the inside, we have to take the glasses off, because we have a skewed view of ourselves, the world around us, the way we're managing our business, everything's skewed and it's not working. How do we know it's not working? Because we're sick and we feel stressed. So it's not working. So what do we have to do? Walk away from the business? No, we need to take the glasses off, clean the lenses, or put a different set of glasses on, i.e. a new perspective. And that's what I worked on. And I worked on it really hard last year to get a different perspective. And Yeah, Nancy was saying, I didn't guess that it was you, but not surprised because you shared some of this information, the full-blown diabetes diagnosis. Yeah. And so I was able to change it through thought alone. And we teach about neurological rewiring and how to rewire and get different perspectives and create new neurological connections in the brain and in the body. We teach that as a part of our healing program. Why? Because that is the most powerful medicine that you have, hands down. There's nothing that's more powerful than that. Your healing starts with what you believe in between your ears, and what you resonate with in your heart. So let's go back, and I want to show you a few other slides. So stress is a major driver of chemical imbalances in your body and your brain, and a major driver of inflammation. When you get stressed, your body releases cortisol, aka the stress hormone, in limited bursts, as I mentioned earlier, which is not a bad thing. Cortisol is so powerful, as I mentioned earlier, and I think it's worth mentioning again, that it has the power to regulate your blood sugar. It has the power to regulate your circadian rhythm. It has the power to lower your blood pressure, believe it or not, and reduce inflammation in your body. And it can even create new stem cells in your brain, actually. So cortisol has a lot of benefits, but chronic stress that's repeated and with prolonged exposure, like a demanding job, for example, right? It doesn't offer the same perks. Over long periods of time, these elevated levels of cortisol can push you further and further down the road towards obesity, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, depression, high blood pressure, and a host of other issues. Gastrointestinal, right? Metabolic disease, neurodegenerative disease. Wait till you see some of the studies I have on some of the next few slides on what it does to your brain. So I love this quote by Hans Selye. He says, every stress leaves an indelible scar, and the organism pays for its survival after a stressful situation by becoming a little older. So stress really does age us. It absolutely does. It influences multiple biological aging pathways, in fact. When you feel stress and your body has kicked into action, firing this cortisol and adrenaline into your system, you get ready for that fight, right? Whether it's facing your credit card bills, you're trying to negotiate with a moody teenager, or the business, or the bills, or whatever, right? And so without realizing it, your body has already started making changes. It's sped up your breathing, your muscles are tense, it's raising your pulse and your blood pressure, right? And the body requires a lot of energy to shift into these fight or flight processes in the body. And when this happens, it hurts you because it's depressing your immune system. It's slowing down your digestion. It's telling your brain that it can't sleep because there's danger, right? And of course, it does cause premature aging. In fact, this premature aging can even be measured with what we see as a decrease in the length of our telomeres, which is a part of our DNA strand. So you can measure your biological age. How many of you knew this? You can measure your biological age by getting a DNA test that looks at the length of your telomeres. How many of you knew this? And you can do this through us if you ever want to. And you can see the change in how you reverse age. You can see your telomeres lengthen when you go through our program. It's a lot of fun to watch that, right? And you guys have seen my before and after pictures. You've seen my reverse aging. You can see it, right? And so I want you to see how important this is as a factor in driving you into illness or driving you back into the ability to heal and then maintain super vibrancy, super health, super vitality. So what are some of the indirect mechanisms of stress on health, right? Before you start seeing it on labs, you end up with a dysregulated prefrontal cortex. You can't access the prefrontal cortex, which means that you can't think logically. How many of you have seen my talk on the amygdala hijack, where I talk about that? I'm looking for raised hands. Yeah. I go into the deep science of what happens here, how your frontal cortex shuts down, the reptilian brain or the amygdala starts firing up, and that part of the brain actually starts to grow while the frontal cortex starts deteriorating. You start losing your gray matter up here. But initially, when you start getting under stress, how many of you have ever noticed that you have a hard time focusing, like your executive function? You're not making the best decisions. A lot of us make poor decisions. When I was really, really sick, in the depth of my, in the dark night of my existence, I was making really poor decisions. I couldn't think for myself, and I didn't have anybody around to help me make better decisions. So I did make a lot of mistakes, which precipitated more stress, which precipitated more loss of executive function. It was just this really bad cycle, right? The hamster wheel of hell. And we also tend to make really poor food decisions, and we do a lot of emotional eating. And that's one thing that I love to work with our clients, and so does Anne. And we like to teach you guys, like, let's start making healthy stuff so that when and if you do have a little emotional breakdown, which during our healing process, we all have a lot of that. And even once we're healed, it's normal to have a purge of emotions, and it's okay. And if we tend to bury them in food, which many of us do, some of us do it all the time, and some of us just do it sometimes. I'll do it sometimes, not often, but I like to take it out on really good food. So I'll actually get in the kitchen and start making beautiful, colorful foods, roasting carrots and sweet potatoes, because the orange makes me feel good visually to see it, right? And then I'll put coconut oil on it. It tastes better than butter, right? It's so good. And I'll start making fruit salads, and I'll start doing all these different things so that I can binge and stuff my face when that does happen. And I'm just putting it full of really, really good food instead of the bad foods, right? Difficulty and resistance of complying with medications and healthy behaviors or your supplement protocols, right? Some of us, there is a time and a place where we sometimes do need a medication for a period of time. But how many of you have noticed, if you're just feeling really bad and you're having a lot of stress, like mental stress, that sometimes you just don't even take your medication, or you don't take your supplements, or you don't eat according to your food protocol that you know that you're supposed to do, right? We'll have impaired sleep, a lot of emotional reactivity and emotional-based decision-making, which those are not the good decisions, guys, right? Stress also increases our vulnerability to addiction and relapse, and it causes the breakdown of coping skills as well. Here is a research article that I took from neurology, from the American Academy of Neurology, that was saying that higher cortisol was associated with worse memory, impaired visual perception, and lower cerebral brain and occipital frontal gray matter volumes. In other words, what it's saying is that you're actually having atrophy or loss of the brain tissue. You're losing it. That's what we call neurodegenerative disease. Neurodegenerative disease is Parkinson's. Neurodegenerative disease is dementia. It looks like MS. It looks like all of these other types of things. When we're talking about loss of mass of gray matter, that is brain degeneration, neural degeneration. And this also happens with stress, because the stress makes your body put out more cortisol, and you might as well be putting a poison into your body, because it's literally frying your brain cells and causing a physical, measurable decrease in your gray matter in your brain. This is fascinating. So let's take a look at this. I got this from the CDC, and many of us are aware that over the last, 50, 60 years or so, we've had a steady increase in the life expectancy, right? We're all aware of that. Raise your hand just to confirm that you know that over the last 50, 60 years, we've had an increase in our life expectancy. But how many of you have noticed in the last few years that we're having a decrease of quality of life? So the life expectancy hasn't decreased, but the quality of life has decreased. Like people are getting sick, like seriously sick with diseases that are known to kill you, that the medical community says cannot be reversed. Type 2 diabetes, right? Cardiovascular disease, cancers, dementia, Parkinson's. Those are at the top two right now. People are even like suffering from severe intestinal disorders, autoimmune diseases. Raise your hand if this is ringing a bell. Like we all know people. It's not unusual anymore to know somebody that's suffering with these types of diseases. So how many of you have noticed patterns? I'm huge on noticing patterns. I have noticed that in the last decade, we're seeing more and more people from age 50 to age 87. That's the average life expectancy. It's actually gone down from 87, but we're seeing them living with a bad quality of life. So they're not living long anymore with quality. They're losing their quality. They can't go out and travel. All the things they wanted to do by the time that they retired, they can't do it anymore. How many of you have noticed that? The quality of life has decreased. Well, look at what's happening now, which makes sense to me. First, we see the life expectancy go up, and people are relatively healthy. Then in the last 15 years, we've seen that the quality of life has been declining for these people that are living older. We've seen a huge skyrocketing increase in home care centers for our elderly who can't take care of themselves. That used to not be normal, guys. How many of you remember your grandparents still driving and still playing golf and still traveling around the world when they were in their 80s? I have seen people in their 80s that were hiking up mountains in Germany faster than I was when I was in my 20s. They were in amazing shape. But yet in the last 15 years, you're seeing more people in nursing care centers than we've ever seen because they can't take care of themselves. And they're not all in their 90s. A lot of them are anywhere between their 50s and their 80s. So we've seen a decline in the quality of life. Now, for the first time in modern recorded history, we're seeing a huge decrease in life expectancy. Take a look at that. This started in 2020. A big decrease in life expectancy, massive, like it's happening very quickly. And doesn't that make sense if you kind of look back and you put the pieces together? Well, for the last 15 years, people started getting more and more sick. Yeah, at a younger and younger age with diseases that we never even heard of 50 years ago. It makes sense. The people that are continuing to go down that road are now starting to die, and they're dying at younger and younger ages because the old model is not working. So what can we do? What can we do? If you're working with us, you know a lot of the answers. So start popping them into the chat. Pop it into the chat. What do we do? I want to focus a little bit on resilience. How do we get our resilience back? Yes, we need to learn how to take care of the physical body with the right nutrition. You got to put the right energy into your body or you're not going to get the output, right? If you're putting apple juice into the car instead of gasoline, it's not going to work, right? So it's the same thing for us. We have to put the right food in, right? Eating cereal in the morning is not going to give us fuel to make it through the rest of the day, right? Skipping dinner at night is not going to help us to have enough energy for all the healing processes that happen only when we sleep at night, right? Not drinking enough water when we're made mostly of water is going to cause a decrease in the electrical conductivity in our body. It's going to cause a decrease in our ability to have all the thousands of chemical reactions that happen, right? So we have to put the right stuff in. And I also want to talk a little bit about what we can do between the ears, because remember I mentioned that thought really truly is our ability to master this tool between our ears. For us to, it masters most of us. Let's just start with that. It masters most of us. But when we can learn to master it, and we can learn to live from a place of divinity that we were all born with, right? We are children of God. What does that make us? Right? Think about that for a minute. Did anyone ever think of that? Right? If a dog has a child, what is it? It's not a cow, it's a dog. What are we as children of God? What do we have within us? We have a very divine intelligence within us. And you'll hear me talk about learning to live, learning to think with our heart, or learning to think with our gut, learning to think with our intuition or our divine intelligence, connecting to that unconscious mind that knows all, getting that more direct connection, right? And then using what's between the ears as our secondary brain, using it as a tool, because this is so limited in its knowledge. What's between our ears is so limited, but we know all when we come from a place of our heart. We know. How many of you have ever said to yourself, I knew I should have done that. If I would just listen to myself more often, dang it, right? I second guess myself. How many of you did that? I used to do that all the time. I don't do that rarely at all anymore. Most of what I do is coming from my heart, which is direct connection to source. And I'm still learning to use this as a tool, but I've gained much more control over it than what I had many, many years ago when I was super sick. And so, and I was able to use what I've learned in my mastery of self. Last year, I was able to apply it so that I could change my perspective. And as I started changing my perspective on how much I was working, it made it easier for me to change my habits, and it made it easier for me to not feel so stressed out. And as soon as I started having that story in my head of feeling less stressed about all the work I was doing, my cortisol levels went down and my diabetes went away, right? So the old model was more about returning to baseline, but it was also more looking just from a biological point of view, right? Like you take a medication for a symptom, that's old model. Returning to baseline is important, but we want to teach you how to optimize. But what's even more important is this new model that we're really working on teaching our clients more and more now, and it's using our ability to create a state of neuroplasticity in order to rewire our brain and our neurology so that we can take off the old lenses through which we see ourselves in the world around us, the storyline that we've been creating. If your storyline isn't working for you in your health, in your relationships, in everything, consider taking the glasses off that you're probably looking through some very foggy, outdated lenses that served you well at one time in your life, but they're not serving you now. And let's take those off and let's start focusing on doing new perspectives. And so I'm going to teach you an active process that implies and helps you integrate and actually utilize the concept of neuroplasticity. And that is through the very powerful tool of reframing. How many of you have heard about reframing? So I love reframing. It's a super powerful tool. We use it all the time when we're working with our clients. We use it all the time personally. It's so super powerful. This is what I did with myself to reverse my diabetes last year. Was I had to do a lot of reframing. I had fallen into some old patterns. Reframing is a technique that's used in cognitive behavioral therapy to identify automatic thoughts and replace them with more balanced thoughts. The practice of identifying the thoughts that are not currently serving you, that are no longer serving you, and stopping these distortions is crucial in breaking the cycles of stress, anxiety, and depression that so many of us find ourselves stuck in. And we do this with our clients. In fact, all of us are trained in doing this. We spend a lot of time reframing our clients in all aspects of their human experience. And then we have a couple of our practitioners, Dina and Rosita, who this is like, they go deep into the repatterning. They go deep into the repatterning of the psyche and getting you to resonate, to not only believe it here or convince yourself here in between your ears, but to really resonate with it, to really embody it in your heart, in every cell and tissue of your body. And there are very powerful techniques. There are many, and we teach you many of these techniques in our programs. We can also work with you one-on-one and do what I call Ferrari therapy, which will take you on this journey of healing and rewiring your neurology and your thought processes a lot faster. So really, when you think about it, and you'll hear us talk about this all the time, you have the keys to your healing. Nobody at the end of the day is going to heal you but you. We will be your facilitators, and that's what all healers should be, are your facilitators. Anyone who says they are healing you, I question that. You heal you. We're here to show you what you have the power to do, right? And it's in gaining that sovereignty back over you that you have life transformation in every area of your life. And so let's take a look at this. This is a big one. It's not when we're talking about reframing, one of the things that can happen that can cause us to feel a lot of stress is, why is this happening to me? What am I doing to see this reflection or this projection? I was saying that last year. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing? Like, well, how did I get myself into this mess? What's going on here? Like, yeah, I want to help a lot of people, but this isn't how I want to do it. It's not what happens to you. It's how you react to it. It's your perception, right? It's your perception. The reality is that in this reality that we live in our world, it's a series of positive, neutral, and negative events, or what some might perceive as negative events. Then we have our thoughts. How are we perceiving and interpreting the events? Because those thoughts create a story. The story creates an emotion. It creates an internal dialogue that creates the emotion. The emotion creates our mood, right? And it's not from the actual event itself. It's from how we reacted to the event or the story that we created, which then causes a cascade of chemical changes in our body. Oftentimes they're not good, right? And so when we reframe, we are practicing becoming aware of the thoughts and the stories, the cycles. Because think about it, our stories are usually repeated over and over. How many of you have that? I know I've got it. I mean, I know all of you do, whether you admit it or not. Everybody has that. That's the way that humans are wired. And so many of us that are sick and struggling, we rehash things, conversations, maybe even conversations that weren't even had. We're having them in our mind, creating more of a story. I mean, people do that. That's human nature. That's just because we haven't mastered the monkey mind. It's running away, creating this storyline that ends up in our reality as we experience it. It literally does. God has given us the power to create our reality, and the world is shifting very quickly right now. And many people are ready to hear this because everything that they've learned, everything that they believe to be true has not led them in the direction of what they want in their life. And they're suffering so much that they're finally ready to listen to something different and be open to new possibilities. And it really is true. I mean, God has given us the power and the ability to create our reality, but it all starts with the internal dialogue and what we're telling ourselves and what we believe and the stories that we have and the belief systems that we have. When we have the belief systems, oh, you got to work hard in order to make it in life. You got to work hard. I got that one from my dad, and I almost killed myself, right? And I'm not saying that I don't work hard now, but the perspective I have is not, you have to work hard in order to make it in life. My perspective is I work hard because I'm so passionate about it that it fills my life with joy, and it fills me with energy, and it fills me with purpose. And that's why I get so freaking excited to talk to you guys. It's why I love to teach you, because I know this stuff works, right? And I'm really good at collecting data and assimilating information. And so I work hard, not so I can make it in life and have a roof over my head. I work hard so that I can contribute and leave something, leave some sort of a legacy for this planet, right? Just something for you guys so that we can change the course for our kids and our grandkids. That's why I do it. And so reframing is super, super powerful, and it can help us break out of the cycles of suffering that we're in. It literally can change the trajectory of our body's ability to be able to heal. And I want to show you some of the common patterns associated with these cognitive distortions that end up creating a negative reality for us and keep us stuck in a cycle of stress. The all or nothing thinking, seeing everything as either a strict success or failure, or it can only be one way. The reality, and quantum science tells us this, there are infinite ways for everything. Our mind can only conceive a very limited number of those different options. But even if we can only conceive 5, that's a start. And getting to sit with other people who think so differently from you can be life-changing, because they can give you perspectives and ideas and strategies that you would have never thought of. Discounting the positive, disregarding positive experience in order to justify harmful patterns. A lot of us do that, believe it or not. Some of you may be reading that going, oh my gosh, I can't believe somebody would do that. I'll bet you've done that at least once in your life. Most of us have. Jumping to conclusions, making assumptions about what will happen or what others will think based on minimal or no evidence. And then emotional reasoning, which would be coming to a far-fetched or untrue conclusion based purely on emotion. How many of you have created stories in your head, like entire stories based off of emotion of something that happened to you, and it takes on a life of its own? And what you don't realize is that it's physically making you sick. It's shortening your telomeres on your DNA, and it's aging you, right? And you're setting yourself up for some serious diseases later on in life if you haven't already gotten there. And so what can we do? The good news is we can rewire the mess. We can rewire the mess, but it's not as simple as just pulling a wire out and then putting it into a different hole. I wish it were that easy. It's not quite that easy, but we can do it. It takes consistency. Just like if we want to build our arm muscles or our leg muscles and get toned, we need to work out at least 3 days a week. If we want to get good at the piano, we need to practice at least 3 days a week, right? So we need to be consistent. But the good news is that through the ability of our brain to create new neurological pathways, it literally will create new highways, new wires, new wiring through neuroplasticity. We can go through some exercises and strategies. There are many of them. I'm only talking about reframing today, right? To build new neurological pathways. So we want to first and foremost become aware of our patterns. And there's nothing to be ashamed about. We just need to become aware of our patterns. There's always a reason why we develop our patterns. There's always a reason. It could either be generational, that was passed down in your DNA, some of the patterns, have you ever noticed that like personality gets passed down in DNA too, right? And some personality traits are not healthy, and those could have happened because of a trauma that maybe our great-great-great-great-great-grandparent went through, right? And so, but we want to become aware of the pattern. And we want to become aware, if we can, of when did that pattern start? Because if it started during this lifetime, it's very likely that that pattern that's no longer serving you now was serving you at that time, and it was a mechanism of protection of some sort, but it's turned into something unhealthy over the years. And we can throw away the patterns when we no longer need them. It's like throwing away an old pair of shoes, right? I like these, but we don't need them anymore. Let's go get something different. And so we can do that when it comes to our neurology. And once we can identify these thoughts, if you can figure out where the root of it came from, that can really be helpful in you helping to get a different perspective, right? Then we can rephrase our negative thoughts. We can also chunk, we call it chunking up, or sometimes chunking down, but mostly in this case, when we have a lot of stress, we want to chunk up, right? Like, so for example, one of the things that I did last year was when I came to the realization that I was under a lot of stress, but I didn't realize that I had a high pain stress. Just like some people have a high pain tolerance, I have a high pain tolerance too. I broke my leg earlier this year and didn't realize it was broken. I was walking around on it. I didn't realize it. So, getting to know yourself better. I'm always getting to know myself better, right? Last year, I realized that I had a higher stress tolerance than I realized, because it was making my body sick and I didn't notice it until I saw my labs and I sat down to really feel into my body. And then I went, oh my God, of course I'm stressed. I'm not sleeping well. The libido's down. I'm losing more hair in the shower. I'm just not feeling joyful and happy. I had a whole list of things once I started paying attention. And so what I did was I started going, okay, well, why am I having this? Well, I'm stressed about work. Well, why am I stressed about work? Well, I've got a lot of projects that are going to help people. And I feel really dedicated and devoted. Like, I'm here to do these projects. I need to get these done. And I feel like I need to get these done now. Like yesterday, people need help. Okay. But what's the higher purpose? Well, the higher purpose is to help people. But am I supposed to do it to my detriment? So I had to chunk up. I had to keep chunking up. Okay, well, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And then finally it was because this is what I came here on this earth to do. This is why God brought me here. Like, this is why I'm here, to help people. Well, okay, but what is it going to do for you to help people? I'm going to feel satisfied and relaxed. I'm going to feel like I did what I was supposed to do here. And I'm going to be able to sleep at night and relax and feel like I did something good for humanity. So as I continued to chunk up and get further and further away out of the weeds, I realized that at the end of the day, it's to fulfill my purpose so that I can feel whole and complete. But I'm never going to feel whole and complete if I'm stuck down in the weeds feeling stressed about everything that I had to do, right? And so we can chunk up. It's a process called chunking up, and we can always have another call on that, right? And I can give you other examples of chunking up. We also want to learn to find the meaning and the wisdom. So that was another thing that I did. I had to look, and I really had to look close at myself. And one of the things that can be so hard for some of us to do is as we start examining ourselves, we start criticizing ourselves, and then we shame ourselves. That's not the point here. That doesn't do anything for anybody. So I started looking deeper. What's the wisdom? Why am I seeing this projection or reflection in my reality? Why? Instead of going, why is this happening to me? Like, what's the meaning? And I started realizing that I had the opportunity to go a little bit deeper with even my old healing, with some of the healing. I've been healing for years. I mean, I've been doing a lot of work for years. We are dynamic beings. You don't just do it once and then forget about it and let everything that you did go. It's a mastery of the human experience so that you can have the best experience that you want and learn how to master and create your reality as you go. Like, that's the ultimate goal, I believe. That when we finally wake up to that, we're like, oh, that's, yeah, and to leave the world a better place, to contribute to humanity, right? But to do it in such a way, that we learn how to do it with ease and grace, because that's how I believe God wants us to be able to do it. Not everything should be a struggle. And so I found myself looking for the wisdom and looking for the meaning in everything that had happened to me last year. And I realized that I was being given an opportunity to do something really big, right? As everything that we're doing with you guys now, with all the things that we've been doing, and continued growth and being able to, how can we help more people and make it more affordable and make supplements more affordable and make protocols easier for people to take and all of the things. And I realized that I could do it with ease and grace. And that this was an opportunity for me to practice what I had been learning over the last few years. Right. And so I got put into the pressure chamber. What was I going to do? And I wasn't doing well until I saw my blood labs, and then I had to sit down and reevaluate. And I made the decision that the wisdom in this was that I can do this with ease and grace, and I can change my perspective. I don't have to, yeah, I was putting in some really long days last year, but I could still have time to eat. I could still have time to go for a walk and kiss my husband and give him snuggles and call my grandbabies and do all the things, right? Like, there's still time for that. And if I couldn't get everything done in the exact timeline, then I needed to put my trust in God that everything's happening in the right time, the way it's supposed to happen. And that was my wisdom. And once I gained that wisdom, my blood sugar started to come down. I started sleeping again, right? My hair started looking better, like all the things. I started improving. And so it was a realization of what was it that I needed to learn, right? What was it that I needed to implement that I wasn't seeing because I was too far down into the weeds? And so for you too, finding the meaning and the wisdom, why, if we look at it from this perspective, if we witness our reality, like if we're a fly on the wall, if we watch it and we go, this is not where I want to be, remember that you're the one that created it. And you have the power to change it. You have the power to change that. You do. But we just have to get the wisdom from it. And if you're having a hard time understanding that and learning how to do that, we've got people on our team who can help you with that type of transformation. Here are some examples, some easy examples of reframing, right? Instead of saying, I am just a mess, we can say, I'm human. It's part of the human experience. This is how we learn and gain wisdom, right? I'm one more step towards success, right? Or instead of saying I'm a failure, you say, I'm learning, I'm gaining the wisdom. Man, that was a big one. I learned another one. Yeah, right? Or instead of saying, why is this happening? As in, why is this happening to me? We say, what's the lesson here? What's the projection? What do I need to see so that I can do something different to get a different end result? And so I hope that this was inspiring for you, and that maybe you learned something new or got a new perspective on things today. And I hope that sharing my own little case study there was inspiring for you too, that you can see that none of us are immune from mastering the human experience. It doesn't matter if we're a doctor or we're the ones that are teaching you. We too have to implement and practice what we preach in order for us to also have a good human experience. So anyways, let's see, what do we have going on here? I would love to open this up to some questions. If you want to pop some things in the Q&A. Thank you, Nancy. Very good reminder of some helpful things. It is a good reminder, right? And so many times, like, a lot of us probably have heard these kind of things before, right? But it is a good reminder to hear it again. It's a great reminder for us to hear this stuff again, because we forget. We forget. Thank you, Susan and Marie. Thank you. I'm really glad that this inspired you, and you too, Ron. I'm going to open up the Q&A and answer just a few questions here. And Jana, I'm sorry, I'm just now seeing that you were going to come up as a panelist. Erin, if you know how to bring her up, go ahead and bring her up. And next time we can bring you up sooner. Sorry about that. Nancy says, I don't know my blood sugar baseline because I was diagnosed late by my doctor and I have been working on it. It's been coming down, so I'm not sure. How can I find out now? So this is what I would love for you to do, Nancy. It's very likely that over many years now, over the last decade, that you have had in your regular annual blood work, that they should be checking your blood glucose and your hemoglobin A1C also. So why don't you go back and ask for some of your older records? Let's look at that from before you were sick, right? Let's take a look at that. That could be a good baseline for you. If you can go back, you just might have to do some digging, right? But most doctors will keep these records for many, many years. So I would go and check that out. And we can do blood testing with you too. So we can do that with you. So if you want to get on a call and talk about any of the concerns, you know how to schedule with us, go ahead and do that. If it's been a while, we can kind of do a reassessment and see where you're at. Carolyn Bazin, did I say that right? Your last name? Carolyn says, I'm currently suffering from really bad nausea too. Anything I can do about this? Well, there may be some other things involved there, and I'm not sure what else we have going on. Stress can definitely cause nausea. So can toxins. So can certain medications. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. That's a deeper question. If you're not already working with us, why don't you schedule something with us? I've got a special offer for you guys. If you're not already working with us, and I'll share that here with you in just a second. Here's an anonymous. What about trauma-induced stress, generational trauma, ACE score of 9, chronic diseases, psoriasis from birth? Oh, wow. An ulcer since age 8. You are not broken. You have the capacity to heal. You are divinely created and you can heal. And from my perspective, you already are. That's why you're here. That's why you're here listening to us tonight, right? You're already here. You're already healed. Now you're just going through the time of the three-dimensional world to get to experience your journey and the choices you make to take you on that healing journey. Trauma-induced stress is very real. We have a trauma masterclass coming up soon. Have you registered for that? If you have not, Shalane or Aaron, can you guys put the link in for our trauma masterclass that's coming up? It starts in just a few days. Please put it into the chat and let them know what that is. Let me look here and see if I can grab it also. I think it's masteringtraumamasterclass.com. Mastering Trauma Masterclass. Can you check that? Yeah, just check that and make sure that that's right. You can register for that because if you have trauma-induced stress and all of these issues, you definitely want to watch this 5-part series. You are going to be inspired and you'll have an opportunity to change your life. Yeah, you can heal from this. I know you can. I've seen it. You have to believe that you can, and then take action on that. How to sign up for brain rewiring. Yes. Let me go back and do the screen share here really quick. And I'm going to share this with you. You can take a picture of it. Hold on one second. Oops. Did I get the right screen? Is that the right screen? I think it is.
It's showing your the examples of reframing.
Okay.
And now it's showing the 20% on your first visit.
All right. So take a picture of that. Melanie, take a picture. Anyone who is interested, if any of you are interested, I got this coupon for you. Take a picture of this. So you go to our website. If you can put that in, Shalane or Aaron, our website, it's modernholistichealth.com. And you can go to book an appointment, and we are offering you 20% off on a first visit with any of our practitioners. And if you're not sure who to get with any of them. Any of them can help you. If you know for sure that you want to start working on some brain rewiring and trauma work, go with our medical energetics or our neurological repatterning practitioners. You will see them on our website. We also have an About Us page, and you can see pictures. So you can see all of our faces and all of the things that we do. So go and check that out. Carolyn is saying, is it true NRF2 helps maintain your telomeres? There are a few genes that are involved in maintaining our telomere length, but they're not the sole deciding factors. Remember that we are ultimately, with our thoughts, with our actions, right, with our choices, we control how the genes decide to work for us or against us. We're controlling the car. Our genes do not have ultimate control. How long does it take to rewire neuron pathways with neuroplasticity to make good thoughts? Well, Carolyn, that is a great question. That depends on how hard, on how much, how consistently that you're working on it. Like if you're working out 5 days a week, you're gonna have some big physical body changes a lot faster than if you're doing it 2 days a week, right? It also depends on how out of shape you are, right? So, you know, some people it's going to take them 6 weeks and their body's going to be beach ready, and other people it's going to take them 6 months, right? The same thing goes with the brain. How much trauma is in there? How big are those neurological pathways that the storylines that you're running in right now? Those neurological pathways, they can be like 5-lane highways, or they can be like little 2-lane highways. It's harder to create the new ones. It's not impossible, but it takes more work to create the new ones if you got 5-lane highways on the hamster wheel of hell that you've been in for years, right? And so it can take time. Sometimes these can go a little faster with added ketamine assisted neurological repatterning, which we can connect you with our partner for the ketamine, and then we take you through a program of neurological repatterning for 6 months with all the integration. We know many people around the country who do plant medicine facilitations with psilocybin, also known as magic mushrooms or ayahuasca or different things like that. If an individual is having a lot of physical issues, it's probably more recommended that you go a different route. But those can speed up the neurological repatterning, but it's not, if you don't do all the work with it. For example, there are certain supplements that can speed up how fast your body can get into shape, but it doesn't take the place of going to the gym or working out. You still have to work out or the supplements are not going to work. It's the same thing with these plant medicines or the ketamine, right? It's not going to take the place of the work. You still need to do the work. Our programs are phenomenal because of the expertise that we bring, and we understand not just one tool or modality for rewiring your neurology. Our team comes together and we've got combined, we probably know 50 or more different tools and modalities, and we incorporate most of them with our clients, depending on what we believe is going to work the best. And there's a lot of integration that is necessary, because once you have an aha moment and you create that first new neurological pathway, it's not a 5-lane highway yet. It's just a little single track trail, and it needs to be constantly worked on in order to build it into a 2-lane highway, and then a 3-lane highway and a 5-lane highway, so that those old highways, those old patterns that no longer serve you, start to go away. And that requires a lot of integration, constantly doing the integration work, right? And using the different tools and modalities that we teach you so that you can take that from a brand new single little neuron highway into that really big, 5-lane highway, right? It just takes time. I think we're almost done with questions. Melanie, yes, our team, Dina and Rosita, both are amazing with brain repatterning. So with neurological repatterning, so they can help you with that. And then what is chunking up and what is chunking down? We kind of talked about that a little bit. Carolyn, we can talk about that more. are you working with us in one of our programs? I think you are. You should ask
Yeah,
Anne to go
she
over that
is.
with you. Ask Anne to go over that with you in one of the classes. What is chunking up and what is chunking down? But it's getting out of the weeds, getting out of the details, right? So sometimes getting a 30,000-foot view on why we're doing the things that we're doing can help us not only to have resolution with our own internal conflicts and our own stories that where we're having self-induced stress, but it can also bring resolution if you're ever having a conflict with someone else. So that will be an easy example. So I was talking with a client earlier today whose husband, they've kind of had some separation in their relationship, and they've been together for over 43 years. They live in New Zealand, and he's out sailing. I think he's been out sailing on his boat for a few months now and won't come home. And she said that this all started with COVID, and she was seeing things that she was seeing corruption. And she was trying to talk to her husband about it, and he didn't want to have anything to do with it. He was believing his belief systems were way over here and her belief systems were way over here. They were like 180 degrees difference. And she misses him. And it's caused some stress in her life because he doesn't want to be around the house and blah, blah, blah. He was trying to convince her and she wouldn't be convinced, and she's trying to convince him and he wouldn't be convinced. And so we had a talk today about respecting other people's model of the world, because the only thing at the end of the day that we can really control is ourselves. And if we can learn to focus more on ourselves and stop worrying about convincing everybody else to believe our model of the world, life gets a lot easier, number one. And then we talked about chunking up. Why I started asking her, why were you trying to get him to see your side? And why did you want so hard to convince him to believe you? And as we started chunking up, she started realizing, well, it's just because I love him and I was worried about him and I wanted him to be safe and I just want him to be healthy at the end of the day, because I just want us to have a good relationship and I want us to continue growing old together, and I want to have experiences with him, and I want to snuggle with him, and I want to love on him, and I want to feel loved by him. And at the end of the day, it wasn't really about the importance of him believing her beliefs. It was because she was worried about him and wanted him to be safe and happy, right, and healthy. At the end of the day, he wanted the same thing. So if you get out of the weeds and you just start looking at a higher level view, he wanted the same thing. He refused to believe what she was believing because he believed what he believed. But why? What was the overall reason why? Is because he loved her and he wanted her to know that he loved her, and he wants her to love him, and he wants to feel loved by her. And he wants to go sailing with her, and he wants to live out the rest of his years having joy and having happiness and creating more amazing stories with her. At the end of the day, they both wanted the same thing. They both wanted to protect each other. And that's a great example of chunking up, getting out of the weeds. Who cares about the details if COVID was man-made, or if COVID, came from a bat or a spider or a snake? Who cares if the Chinese really released it or if the US government did? Who cares if they lied about the vaccine? Who cares if the vaccine is really killing people or not? At the end of the day, what do we all want for each other? I want you to live happily. I want your children to be happy, because I know that we're all connected. We are all connected. And it's not just a spiritual thing. Science teaches us that we are literally all connected. We are one. And I want my brothers and sisters to be happy. I want you to be healthy. I want you to be empowered and step out of your cycle of suffering. And I want you to find your place of happiness and contentment and health and vitality. At the end of the day, I don't care about all the political BS. I don't care about all that stuff. All I want is for you to be happy. And I want to love you. And I want you to be full of love and lead your life full of love and vitality. That's what I want for you at the end of the day. That's an example of chunking up. Does everybody get that now? Yay. Okay, perfect. So thank you for joining me. Thank you so much for being here. And I look forward for you to join us at our next Inner Circle. You can go to, can you put the link in for the Inner Circle please, so that everybody can register for the next ones. mhhinnercircle.com. You can register for the next ones. I've got some case studies coming up for the next ones, but I have had some requests for some different topics. And so I might be changing the topics, and as soon as I do, I'll post it up for you so you can see it. But if you want to, you can register for all of them if you want to, so you don't have to remember to go back and register for the individual ones. But anyways, I just wanted to give you a heads up. We might be changing some of the topics that are already in there. For some of the case studies, we do have some great ones coming up where we're actually going to have some of our clients come up and talk about their own healing journey and their own experience. And then I'll be showing some of the before and after labs. So we're super excited about that. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Susan and Monica and everyone for coming and joining us today. We love you so much. I'm sending you so much love. Can you feel it? Can you feel it? Have a wonderful evening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.